Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm today's host, Coleman Hodges, and joining us today, coming off of a two-time world championship performance at the 2023 World Champs in Fukuoka. He got 3 medals there, 2 of them gold. He's an Olympic gold medalist as well, hailing from Wales in the United Kingdom. Today, we're sitting down with Matt Richards. Matt, how's it going, man?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
We're about a week removed from the meet, or maybe 5 days or so. So just right off the bat, how is the meet sitting with you? It is a long meet. Just from a media perspective, 8 days is a lot of coverage to provide, let alone putting your body and and your emotions, I'm sure, on the line for 8 days straight. How are you feeling coming off of the performance you had and just letting it sit with you for a few days?
Yeah, I'm really good. Like you say, it was a really long week, or week and a day, I should say. It was 8 days long, wasn't it? So, obviously for me, I was racing every day. I had at least one race per day for the full 8 days. Obviously, some of those days there was heats and semis and things like that. So, a few days where there were multiple races a day. But thankfully, I didn't have any in the same session, so that made life a little bit easier throughout the week. But I think I finished off with 11 races. Some ups and some downs. Obviously the 2-3 final was a huge up. That was a great result. I was really happy with that. But as you said about emotions, it was really important straight after that we kept the emotions in check and didn't get too excited and waste any emotional energy on the sort of the happiness of that, because I had the 100 free heats starting the next morning. And I would be lying if I said I was satisfied with the 100 free. I think I was capable of a lot more than that in the final. But lots of technical errors and mistakes led to the swim not being quite where I wanted it to be, but it was still a PB. So, again, highs and lows. It was frustrating, but at the same time, a really positive step in the right direction. So overall, it was a great week. Lots we can take forwards and learn from, and stands us in a great stead ready for next year.
Yeah. So let's get into some specifics about the meet. You said highs and lows. Obviously the meet started for you all on a bit of a surprise. I'm guessing low with that. You came in the 400 free relay. I believe it's a relay that the Brits have been working on for quite a while and kind of just going up and up and up. And you guys came in as a favorite and looked to be a favorite out of those prelims, and then ultimately end up getting DQ'd. Just as a team, how did you guys bounce back from that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were all gutted. We were all really disappointed with that. As you said, it's something we put a lot of work in. We were all really excited for that coming into the meet, and we knew we could do something special. When we finished that heat and we saw 3:10.4 on the board, I think that was the final time. We looked at that and we were like, that's a hell of a morning swim. We saw that and we were like, there's improvements to be made across the board. This is by no means our fastest, and we've gone 3:10.4 in the morning. What an exciting time this is. But obviously then we were all gutted to see the DQ come up shortly afterwards. But I think something we've all said a few times: we win together and we lose together. A relay is a team event. The disqualification came when I came into the wall and Jacob dived in after me. It's not one man's fault. My finish probably could have been better, which may have given us the 1/100th we needed to stay within the cutoff. So there's lots we can learn from that. And I think going forwards, there's, all of us would much rather that have happened this year than next year. And I think it's safe to say next year we won't make that mistake again. We've made sure not to make that mistake again on any of the other relays throughout the meet. And I think that's what it's all about. It's all learning. We'll all continue to move forwards and improve and get better, and we know where we can work on now. But overall, as I said, we were all really gutted and disappointed with that. But I think all of us did a great job of putting it behind us and moving on so that we could go again and step up the next time we raced.
Yeah. And then next up you have the individual 200 freestyle. which you've had a great season in. You came and raced in the States in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm pretty sure won the event here. I
Yeah.
know you won the 100 free as well there. And so, it's like, it seems like you've been having a good season. You qualified for it individually as well, just, coming out of your trials. How are you feeling heading into that individual swim? And then as you moved through prelims and semis, was the confidence building for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming into the meet, I knew I was on good form. I could tell by the stuff I'd done in training and just by the way I was feeling in the water, I knew it was going to be a great meet. The 200 free was no exception to that. Coming into it, I knew I was on form to do something really good. I knew that the swim I had in the final at trials probably wasn't my limit. I knew there was more to come from that. And so coming into the meet, I knew that just executing a better swam race tactically, there was probably a faster time. And that's obviously before you then consider the technical improvements we can make between April and the summer. So overall, I was really excited. I knew it was going to be great. And obviously progressing through the rounds, the heat, the 45.8, I think I did in the heat, was a great swim. I was really pleased with that. It was a very controlled and measured morning swim. But obviously the time was still a 45. So I was like, it shows and backs up my thoughts and feelings knowing that I was going to be on good form. Obviously then into the semi, I think I was 45.4 in the semi. And on that, again, it was just trying to be as smart as possible about how we raced it, knowing that I had a busy schedule and a lot of races still to come. Trying to sort of protect myself for the back end of the week was really important as we progressed through the rounds on that. So I think that got me in lane 2 for the final, which actually worked out as a really, really useful lane to be in. So I breathed to the right, and so coming home on that last 50 meant I was looking across the pool to all the guys in the middle, so I could see where everybody was. So that was actually a really handy lane to end up in. Yeah, and then obviously as we got into the final, I was ready to go. I was excited. I was confident. I knew I had it in me to do something. I think I'd be lying if I said when I came off the last turn and saw how far David was ahead while I was underwater. I'd be lying if I said I thought I was going to win at that point. But I sort of came off the wall, saw him underwater, and saw he was probably a body length ahead still. And I was like, right, I need to go here. I need to dig in. I need to get to that wall. Because I was like, I've got a big shift here to pull a body length on the reigning world champion down the last 50. And to be honest with you, when I hit the wall, I didn't actually know where I'd come. I was pretty certain I was going to have medalled, but I didn't know what colour that medal was going to be. So when I turned around and saw number 1 next to my name, I had to take my goggles off and check it said number 1 and not number 7, because I was like, hold on a second, let me make sure, because before I get excited, I need to make sure that says 1. But yeah, that was a pretty special feeling seeing that, and definitely made me extremely hungry for more.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, that was such a surprising race for us as commentators and as fans, just because you had David Popovici, the reigning world champ, looking very strong and on form through that first 150, kind of doing what he did last year to win that world title. And then we kind of saw the field come back on him. And as you said you saw him coming off that last wall. I'm curious, what is the line between seeing someone a body length ahead and being like, I don't think it's going to happen, and then being and the opposite of that, saying to yourself,
Yeah.
okay, let's dig in, let's see what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, so from my perspective, coming into that final, we knew the way to win it was going to be the back half of the race. So obviously, I've got a lot of natural speed. I have a lot of easy speed as a result of my 50 and 100 training that I've done. The easy speed comes quite naturally to me, and so I knew that going into that race, my coach and I had discussed it, and we said the way to get in there and win this is going to be as controlled and as measured as possible down the first 100, but stay in the race, make the move on the third 50 to pull into a position where I can do something, and then the last 50, I just have to make sure that I outdo everybody else in there, technically, tactically, and just in terms of finding something within yourself down that last 50. And I'm excited to see as we progress and we continue to race that event, what can I do by swimming it a different way? Because I know that I could go out in a 49 and flip a 49 to feet in the first 100 and just see what happens. And there will be a time and a place for that, and we will try that at some point. and I'm quite excited to see what I can do from that because I don't know just yet. But yeah, again, it's all about learning and it's all about finding ways to improve and continue lowering the time. And it's not a quick process. It's not something where we're looking for shortcuts. We're looking to try and look at the long term and the goals we've got for that event for me and figure out what's the best way we can test every way of doing it, test everything we need to do in training, everything we need to do in the gym, and make sure that we find the best way for me to do it so we can get to a point where I can hang my goggles up at the end of my career and say that time for my PB on the 200 free is the fastest I could possibly have gone. And who knows what that time will be.
It seems like the UK has developed such a culture in this event specifically, and it seems to be bleeding over into the 100 freestyle as well, which are obviously kind of the two marquee events for relays as well as individual swims. But I'm curious, like what's driving you in this specific event? I feel like a lot of people would say, hey, I can swim a really good 100. I'm going to go focus on the 100. And, like you said, you've got the speed. I'm going to go swim the 50 and the 100. But it seems like the UK has such a tradition with this event now that they've built only over the last decade. And I am curious as to, what drives you, what's motivating you to try to reach new heights in this event specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I just love racing. I mean, if I had enough time in the day, I'd race everything. I'd race every event, and I'd love doing that. So I'd say that the sort of the drive for me is just the love for the race. I think the 2 free is such a fun race to do. It really hurts, don't get me wrong, but because it's that balance between really quick but also long enough that tactics play a massive part. I think it's got a really nice balance for me of like utilizing natural speed and then utilizing racing smart, and I love that balance. So that's the reason why I race the 2 free because I really do just enjoy it. The 100 free I also absolutely love. The way I see the 100 free is almost like an extended sprint. It's not an all-out sprint like the 50, but you're almost sprinting from the start, and then you've just got to turn and keep sprinting. And I love that because it's just so fast-paced. It's so exciting. You never know what's going to happen in a 100 free. And it comes down to the finest margins, and I love that too. And as for the 50, the 50 is essentially for us is just used as training for the 100. But I'd be lying if I said I don't want to sort of progress into that event a little bit more as I get older and potentially, sort of in my later 20s, maybe move away from the 200s and start to move down more to just the 50 and the 100. We've got a long time before we're going to have to worry about that. But in the meantime, I'll keep it ticking over and enjoying it. I think I might throw in a bit of fly sometime soon again. I used to do fly quite a lot when I was younger, and sort of stopped doing it to focus on the freestyle to make Tokyo. And then obviously Tokyo got pushed back. Then there was another year where I wasn't doing fly, and then the year after that we kind of forgot about it. And so basically, I'm not done fly for a few years, but I'd like to bring that back. And I think, in Britain, the 100 and 200 freestyle have become somewhat of a sort of just an event that everybody wants to be a part of. It's an event where we know we've got so much strength. We're seeing huge talent coming through, and everybody wants to be a part of that. Everybody wants to play their role in those relays and help be a part of bringing home some silverware for the UK. So I think that's what's driving it, and I can't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think it's only going to continue to progress and improve. But yeah, I think we're as a country and as a team, we're not satisfied with where we are yet. We want to push those events on even further and take them to new heights.
Yeah. So continuing the conversation of the 200 freestyle, I think the men's 800 free relay was one of my favorite events of the meet in terms of must watch TV, because you in the United States had an epic duel. It was a really great race. And I mean, it came down to the last 50 really, where you guys were just neck and neck. Obviously you all are the defending Olympic champions. The US came in the defending world champions. It was the first time that your Olympic gold medal squad had raced this event together since they won that gold in Tokyo. So what was the feeling for you guys heading into this race, knowing that, you guys have won with this lineup before, but it was not a surefire thing with the US being as strong as they were.
Yeah, I mean, going into that race, I think it was a really interesting dynamic. Standing behind the blocks for the final in Tokyo, all four of us were stood there thinking, we're going to win this. How close can we get to the world record? I think the other night on that 4x2, it was a very different situation. None of us were stood there thinking this is going to be a clear win. We need to see if we can get the world record. We were all stood there thinking the Americans have got a hell of a team this year. They've really thrown together a hell of a group of four lads, and this isn't going to be easy. We're not going to be able to just get in and chase the world record tonight. We need to get in and make sure we come home with the gold. That was far more important to us this year than trying to chase after that record. And I think it was shown in the race. I think a lot of people before it were sort of talking about it as if we were just going to dominate the race as we did in Tokyo. I don't think people were giving the US guys enough credit for what they were capable of doing. But we knew, going into that, it wasn't going to be easy. We knew they were going to put up a hell of a fight, and they did. All four of those lads were a pleasure to race against, and it was a great race to be a part of and then to watch, because obviously I was a second leg. So after my leg, I then got out and I get to watch the second half of that race. And you could feel the energy from both teams. We were next to each other, like you said, we were neck and neck the whole way through. I think I had Carsten Foster in the lane next to me on my leg on the second leg, and he had a phenomenal swim. I think he was a 44.4. I was a little bit off what I would have liked to have been on my own one on the 44.6. But I think there's plenty more to come with that. Again, I'm still learning how to do it. That's only, I think, the second time I've done a rolling 200 freestyle at a rested meet. So, I've still got lots to learn on how to pace it, because it's almost a different race doing it from a takeover than it is from static, because the momentum you get off that start is massive, but you've then got to try and find the balance between using that momentum and getting the most speed you can out of the first 50, but without sort of chasing it and wasting your energy to ruin yourself on the back half of the race. So yeah, it was a great race, and I think it's going to be another great race again next year in Paris. It's going to be another head-to-head, and I'm sure a lot of the other countries around the world are going to want to be involved in that too. So yeah, it's definitely a really, really exciting race to be a part of, and I'm sure a really exciting race for the fans and the spectators to watch.
Yeah, I know I'm certainly excited about that race coming up next year. And then just, lastly about the world champs, is that 100 free. You kind of touched on it, but going from the 200 to the 100, I'm guessing you were feeling pretty good about where you were at in the meet, where you were at physically. And then, to miss that podium by 3 100ths, to still set a British record. You win a best time, I think, in prelims, semis, and finals. So 3 British records in 3 swims. There's just a lot happening in that swim. Can you break that final swim down for me? You said you felt like you still had areas of improvement. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 100 free for me is a really challenging event mentally. I think physically it's a hell of a lot easier than the 200. It's over much quicker. You've got half the amount of pain to sort of work your way through in the race. So it's a much easier race physically to finish and do well than the 200 is. But the challenging thing about 100 free is the margin for error is practically non-existent. You have no time to make any mistakes, and if you do make a mistake, you have no time to fix it. So for me, the 100 free is just constant learning. Every time I get in and do one, I learn something new that I can then try and implement on the next one. I think the 100 free final for me, you've got to look back at my final at Champs, British Champs, to understand what happened in that race. So at the British Champs in the heats, I was a 47.7, big PB, really, really happy with that. And in the heat, I kind of felt like I hadn't given it everything yet. It was still pretty controlled and pretty smooth. Then I got into the final and went 0.3 star as a 48.0. Duncan and Lewis both touched me out on that, and I think Duncan was 48.01, Lewis was 47.99, and I was 48.02 or something along that. It was really tight. And the mistake I made there was, because I knew I was on good form in the heat, I tried to get out and tried to give it more down the first 50 and then give it more down the way back. and what ended up happening was I worked harder down the first 50, but didn't go any faster. I was just sort of too tensed up and aggressive, rather than letting it flow and letting the race come to me. And therefore, on that back end, I didn't have as much in me as I did in the morning because I was just so much more sore and tight after that first 50. So that was obviously a really tough one for me to stomach, knowing that I could have won that race if I'd just done the same I had in the morning, not even gone faster. However, the learning from that was to learn how to swim that first 50 correctly, how to let it come to me, how to let it feel smooth and easy, and be able to then bring it back. The challenge then was at Worlds in the final. I did a great job of that on the first 50. It was really smooth, very easy. I think I was out 22.8. The turn was really good. It worked well. My breakout off the wall wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. With about 25 meters to go was where things started to go wrong. So obviously I could see Kyle was next to me, and everybody knows just how good he is on that back 50 of 100. I was expecting him to come back at me on that. I knew he was going to be there. And as I saw him starting to make his move in, as we sort of closed in towards that last 25, I essentially made the same mistake I did at trials in the final by sort of trying harder, but did it on the last 25 rather than the first 50. And so I ended up sort of tightening up and shortening my stroke without actually gaining anything. And then on top of that, the last 5 meters, I just had a really bad finish. And that essentially was the reason why I didn't fulfill what I perceived to be my potential in that race. But again, there's so much to learn from that. We know that I've got to work on my finishes because that finish wasn't good enough. That I maybe wouldn't have been able to beat Kyle or potentially even Jack Alexi in that, given what happened in the 25 preceding it. But the finish itself was the difference between me being fifth and being on the podium. As you said, it was like 0.03. But again, looking forwards to next year, there's so much to learn from that, so much to gain from that, and I'd much rather again that have happened this year than next year. So again, I'm really excited to go again at that and see what I can do with the 100 free next year.
Yeah. I mean, it's so just congrats on the season that you did have. Like you said, some ups and downs through this meet, but you're walking out a 2-time world champion individually and on a relay, which I'm guessing is pretty cool. How has that sat with you? Not only to be back on top with Britain in that 4x2, but to also have won your first world title and to get to say, I'm the best in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. I think it took me a while to sort of have it sort of set in. I think, again, a large part of that was trying to protect myself for the back end of the week. I knew after seeing what had happened previously. So in Tokyo, I'm sure you wouldn't mind me talking about this, but in Tokyo, obviously Tom Dean won the 200 freestyle, and the next day had to get in and race the 4x2 with us in the final. And after that, he led us out, I think 1.5 seconds slower than he had the day before on his 2-free final. And I'd spoken with him about that afterwards, and essentially he said after the 2-free final, he was just so succumbed with emotion. He opened his phone and it was just full of messages and people sending in messages, and everything just went crazy. And he found in that moment he got so wrapped up in the emotion of it all that when it came to trying to race again the next day, he just had nothing left. Emotionally, he was just so drained that he just wasn't ready to go. And so I kind of tried to learn from that. And as soon as I saw the result, I was like, this is incredible. This is amazing. I've got to try and be present in this moment and enjoy it. However, I need to make sure I just stay as balanced and measured as possible. This isn't the end of my week. This isn't the last race for me. There's a lot more work to be done for myself and for the team on the relays. And so I was like, trying my very best to almost forget about that race as soon as it was done. I tried to stay off my phone as much as possible, tried to just look about the race next rather than looking back at that race. And so it took me a while to really feel like it had set in. Having said that, now obviously I've been home for a couple of days. I've been finished racing for a few days now. Now it feels like it's set in. When I've come home and I've seen my family, showing the medal to my parents and things, and given the teddies to my mum. It just feels a lot more real now. And it's a hell of a feeling. It's really special. And it definitely makes me really, really hungry for more. You know, all I want to do right now is get back in and start training for next year. And I'm not going to. I know that I need to take time off and I need to sort of detox and have a break. But right now, the last thing I want to do is be out of the water. I just want to go again and get started for next year. But there's a time and a place for that. And when we get back in, we'll make sure we hit it hard.
How long is your break, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm taking 2 weeks this year. So I'll be in the water for 2 weeks. I won't be completely out of sport. I'm too like I don't know how to describe it. I'm too like highly strung to be able to do no sport and no activity at all. I'd just be losing my mind. So I'll probably be playing lots of golf, a bit of tennis, some surfing, going on a few walks with the family and with Emily, my fiance. So yeah, it'll be staying nice and busy. I'm going to tomorrow morning. I'm flying to Ireland to go and see Emily's family, who live over in Ireland. So that'll be really nice. And then the week after that, my mum and dad will be around, and I'll see them for a little bit. So yeah, just spending time with family really, and just relaxing.
Nice. Yeah, speaking of your fiance, Emily, I think you all were engaged sometime within the last year.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
having a significant other that is also a swimmer, can you tell me about the dynamic there? You know, you were both competed at world championships. Obviously, you both understand each other in a way that, you know, probably most people don't. Do you have you found that as a good thing, as helpful? I mean, obviously you guys are engaged, so something's working there.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it definitely wouldn't be for everyone. I know that a lot of people it wouldn't work for, but um, so to give you a little bit of context, so we live together. We've lived together for the last 2.5 years. Obviously, we've been engaged now for just under a year. I think it's a year in a couple of weeks. We've been engaged now. So we live together, we train together, we race together. We basically do everything together. So that's why I say it probably wouldn't be for a lot of people, because I know lots of people would probably want to kill their partner if they spend that much time together with them, especially in sort of high stress situations. But I think we've always done a really good job, the two of us, of being able to differentiate home life and work life. So when we're at the pool, we're there to do a job, whether that's training or racing. We're there to get our job done. You know, you wouldn't know by looking at us that we're a couple. We're very professional in that. You know, we treat each other as just a teammate when we're at the pool, and then when we leave the pool, we also know when's the time to talk about things. You know, when do we want to talk about swimming, talk about the session, talk about a race that's just been, and when's the time to switch off and just be a normal couple and relax and watch a film or go out for a coffee and things like that. So I think we've always been really good at that, and that dynamic has been really good for the two of us in that, you know, obviously both of us are swimming the best we've ever swum. We've both finished this season with huge PBs on our main events, and you know, some great results in terms of where we finish on the world rankings for the year. So yeah, I mean, I do feel very lucky that I get to share the whole experience with my partner, and be able to have her there to sort of live those experiences with me, and vice versa, to be there for her and get to see her excelling at the highest level. I think it's something really special that not many people will get to see, but we'll have some pretty cool stories to tell our kids one day.
I really appreciate that insight. Because I think, yeah, there are a lot of swimming couples, but it sounds like you all, whether it comes naturally, or you've put, you know, the effort and the work into it, it sounds like you found a dynamic that works, which is very
Yeah,
cool. In any relationship, let alone a swimming one.
yeah,
So let's talk about this season for you, just as a whole. You know, we chatted a bit in Fort Lauderdale when you were racing here, but you know, coming off of a big learning season for you last year, can you tell me about some of the changes you were able to implement, or just the things you picked up along the way from last year, to make this season such a, you know, such a big success for you? Am I right in saying that you had a coaching change in the last year
yeah.
and a half? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So So at the end of last year, after the World Championships, actually, and straight before the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships. So in that gap between the Worlds and Commonwealths, I moved from Bath National Centre down to Millfield, which is a school programme. So I think a lot of people at the time were very sort of skeptical about that move and that decision. I think a lot of people had opinions about it, and obviously people are always going to have their opinions. The reason why I made the decision to do that was the discussions I had with Ryan Livingstone, my coach, my now coach at the time. Obviously, he wasn't my coach, but the discussions I had with him at the time, I could tell me and him would work well together. He's extremely, extremely knowledgeable. He's very scientific. He really knows his stuff. And for me, I work really well with that. I like to know what I'm doing and why. I like to know the science behind it, how it's going to help me, and what I can do to make sure I'm getting the best out of myself. That's something I find really valuable in terms of a psychological perspective, to know that everything I've done and been doing and I'm going to do has a purpose and a reason behind it. So I made the decision to move down here and come and train at Millfield. And at the time, we didn't have a sort of setup for me to be there. We were just kind of training with the rest of the people that were there, but under Ryan. And then at the start of this season, we created the performance group, we've called it. And so it's a group of swimmers that last year did have some school pupils in it. I think this year it will just be senior athletes that are full-time swimmers. So it is just a group of performance athletes that are targeting international success, whether that be an under-23s thing this year, where we've got one of the lads heading out to that this year, and then obviously the World Championships. The pure goal of that group is to be, next year will be to be competing at the Olympics, and going on to succeed. So the reason I made the move was down to the coaching decision. I wanted to work with Ryan. I wanted to experience working alongside him, and obviously, as we've seen, that partnership's working extremely well, and I can't thank him enough and sing his praises enough. I know he wouldn't want me to, but I can't tell you just how great of a coach he is. And the move as a whole, last year was really tough. It was the first time for me in my career I had a real setback. I think the fastest 100 free I did standing last year was a 49.1. 2 free, I think I was maybe a 47 low. Was the fastest I managed last year. And obviously coming off the year before that, where I'd had a 48.2 and a 45.7, that was a huge step in the wrong direction from my perspective. I think the lessons I learned off the back of it, though, were so valuable. People always talk in sport about like how it is so important to have the right mindset in sport, and that is so true. I think the fundamentals of the right mindset in sport comes down to confidence and belief in yourself. But I also think it's really easy to be confident and have a lot of belief in yourself if you never get beaten. And so I think for me last year, learning how to come back from that, learning how to get hit and get back up and find a way to move forwards, taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about the sport. It taught me a lot about life. Finding ways to make things work and finding ways to create your own path, and maybe take a path that's not yet been walked or driven. And I think that was huge for me to come into this year, knowing that I was doing everything, following my heart, following my gut, and doing everything with a purpose was so valuable to me this year, and will continue to be throughout my career. I'm sure last year won't be the last time I have a season where I have a setback. The fact that it was the first is great because it's happened so early on in my career. And I've learned how to come back from that. I've learned how to mentally come through it. I've learned what sort of support systems I need around me to help me get through it. And fundamentally learn, how to come back from a season like that and still have the confidence and the belief in myself and in my goals and my dreams and the things I want to achieve, knowing that, just because I've had a setback this year doesn't mean that the things I want to do within the sport are no longer possible. I think there's a lot to be learned from setbacks for everybody in sport and in life in general. Quite often you get a setback before you get to your next level. It's almost like a sort of delayed gratification. You have to wait sometimes in life, and that's just how the game of life goes. but yeah, so it was extremely valuable, and I wouldn't change last season for the world. If you said I could change it and go back and alter how it went and make it perfect, I wouldn't. And that's honest, and that's truly how I feel. Is I needed last year. That year taught me so much more than I would have learned if it had all gone perfectly. And I think if it weren't for that, I maybe wouldn't be in the position going into Paris that I'm in now, where I know what I need to do, I know how I need to get to my goals, and I know what my goals are. So yeah, it's been a wild journey, but I'm loving every minute, and I can't wait to see what the next step and the next phase of this journey will look like.
Do you feel like you've noticed the move, just lifestyle wise outside of your training and your coach? Has that had an impact on you either positively or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, so down here there's not much going on. So I live in Glastonbury. The pool is in Street, which is the town over. It's about a 5-10 minute drive. There's really not much going on around here. I know people know Glastonbury for the festival, but that's actually about 8 miles out from the town itself, and you never really see any of the festival. And when the festival's not on, it's literally like one of the sleepiest little towns you'll find. There's very little that goes on around here. I think in some ways that's quite tough because it means there's not much to do when we're here for a big training block. There isn't many things we can go and do in our downtime. It's also tough in that it's about 2 hours away from my parents, which might sound like nothing to the Aussies or the Americans listening, because I know you guys have a much bigger country to travel than us. But in the UK, a 2 hour drive away is a pretty decent journey. And having said that, Emily's parents live about 6 hours away. So that's massive. That's about as big as it gets in the UK. So it's tough for us in that aspect, is that it is kind of just us down here. But the great thing about that is that it gives us the opportunity to just be completely focused on what we're doing. There is no distractions. Whether you like it or not, you're here to do a job, and the job gets done. I think there's something to be said for putting yourself in a place where you know what you need to do. The people around you have an aligned goal with you. There are no distractions, there's no deviations. Everything is done by the book, exactly how it needs to be done to get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely. And which makes sense. I feel like that's probably what you want in a training environment. I know I've talked to James Guy and Dean, who are in Bath, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they've said they're like, yeah, Bath is kind of boring. There's not a whole lot there. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to have a few distractions if that's what you're focusing on. So obviously moving forward, it's Britain's looking pretty good. You guys have a lot of, like I said, those 100 and 200 freestylers heading into this Olympic year, especially with it being in Europe, not very far at all from the UK. How does it make you feel knowing that you have a lot of competition, right, within your own country? It's like those individual, you're the reigning world champion now, but you're not even guaranteed an individual spot next year.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I love that. Like I said earlier on, I love competition. I love competing. I love racing, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the fact that for us it comes down to one meet. I know you guys are the same. To qualify for the summer meet, you get one chance, you get one shot, you get one final, and you get one race, and that's it. And I really like that. I like that being that system. I know some other countries, some of the European countries, have sort of a window or a selection of a few meets where you can qualify. But from my perspective, I'm like, when we get to the race in the summer, whether that be Worlds or Olympics or whatever, you only get one shot there. You don't get a chance to do the race multiple times and see who gets the best time overall. You get one shot at that race, and it either goes your way or it doesn't. And so why would you not do that to qualify to get there? So like you say, in the UK, in the US, and Australia, there's no guarantees you're going to be on the team next year. It doesn't matter if you're world champion, Olympic champion. It's irrelevant. Once the swim is done, you move on and you've got to go again. You've got to prove yourself every time you get in the water. And I can't wait for that. I'm really excited to get back in. I can't wait to get racing again. I can't wait to get training again. I think we've got a hell of a group of lads coming through on these freestyle events, and it's just exciting, you know. And that's the special thing about these freestyle events and the shorter distance ones, is that not only do you get to compete against these guys, you also get to compete alongside them in the relays. I do think that creates a really interesting dynamic within those events, because you don't get just pure competition when you're, in terms of the guys in your country anyway. They're not just competition, they're also your teammates. You know, you will be racing with them as well as against them. And so you almost end up with a sort of collective goal where I would love to see a ridiculously fast final at Champs. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to get into that 100 free final and see 8 people go 47. Well, that would be fantastic, because our relay, I'd be standing there going, look at this, look at the team we're putting together. You know, I'd much rather that than see me go 47 and then 7 people go 48. Do you know what I mean? I think it's fantastic, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the guys can do and to see what I can do, and just keep enjoying it and having fun and racing.
Well, I think that's a great ending place, Matt. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and dissect this 2023 season and these 2023 World Champs with us. So appreciate you sitting down and agreeing to do this. Any parting thoughts for our audience before we sign off today, or anything we missed?
I don't think so. I think we've covered all the bases, really. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, and I'd advise everybody else to try and find a way of enjoying what they're doing too. And if you do that, you'll probably end up in a pretty good place.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.